Good morning. Welcome to the Windsor Star News Cafe. I'm Don McArthur here with Dylan Kristy and our special guest from the University of Windsor, political science professor John Sutcliffe.
Hello.
Yeah, thanks for joining us.
Welcome to the show. Now you
Pleasure.
may recognize John Sutcliffe's name. Dalton Chen wrote an article where he referenced a report that you co-authored.
Yep.
This was through the Institute on Municipal Finance and Governance, where you looked at, I guess it was the 6 largest cities in Ontario.
That's right.
Or some of the interesting electoral races. And you kind of broke down what some of the key issues are in Windsor and kind of the legacy. One of the things you mentioned is how this municipal race will kind of be based on the legacy of Eddie Francis. Can you just kind of talk about, just briefly, what you found and what your report was about?
Sure. Yeah, well, this report, I was asked to write it early in the year. So, in a sense, the thunder's sort of been stolen. It doesn't seem as exciting anymore. But at that point, before the campaigns had really taken shape and the candidates had taken shape, we were asked to give our opinions on what the major themes would be in the upcoming municipal elections. And then the authors, editors took the stories from across the different cities in Ontario to see what patterns emerge. And I think one of the things that has become very clear that I talked about was the Eddie Francis effect, if you like, that the extent to which Eddie Francis would be a prominent figure in the race, even having made a decision not to run. I think that very clearly became one of the defining features of the race, would be this staying to the legacy, the policy course of the existing council, or moving direction, albeit slightly. And I think we've seen that sort of become more prominent as we get closer to the election time. Just yesterday in your debate, the candidates were talking about contracting out. And that was one of the issues I sort of heard raised that would possibly become a point of contention, whether the council would continue along the route that had been set, or whether there would be a sort of a move back towards in-house service provision.
For sure. Now, you were spot on with contracting on municipal services. You're also spot on. You said the tax freeze and taxes would be a key issue in this election. And also you said that Dilkins would likely run on the history of the previous councils, and that's been spot on as well.
Well, I sound good.
Yeah, no, you did a great job.
No, again, I think it's not. I don't want to blow my own trumpet, as it were, but I think that when you have this kind of situation where there is one incumbent running, it is slightly different, and it would have been different had Bill Mara decided to run. I think at that point, then you have two sitting councillors, or a situation where you have sitting councillors competing against each other, then the ground shifts slightly.
Yeah.
But in this case, where you have one incumbent or councillor running against multiple outsiders or people that have not served on this council, then that's likely going to be the frame that shapes the debate. I think that from very early on was quite clear, and then I think again we've seen that with Eddie Francis formally declaring that he supports Drew Dilkins. I think that's not a great surprise to anybody, but that sort of again clearly shapes the debate in that direction.
No. Oh, for sure. Now, do you think that Eddie's endorsement will carry a lot of weight?
That's a tricky one. Because like any politician, there are some people that really love you, and there are many people that don't. But I think one of the things that's become clear is that Eddie Francis has many detractors, but he has, I think, more supporters. He has been a popular mayor, or at least within a size enough to win elections, and probably I think it's fair to say he would have won again had he chosen to run.
Probably.
Now, whether that's what people decide, basis for their vote or not, that's difficult to say. So I'm not sure, but I think it doesn't hurt to have a popular backer.
Yeah, no, for sure.
There's been an interesting dynamic this campaign in that sort of John Milson is running against, not only Larry Horowitz and Drew Dilkens, he's also running against Eddie Francis, because anytime he criticizes Dilkens or administration, Eddie Francis pops up. He's on our show, he's on the radio. He's actually attacking Milson. Is that unusual? Or?
No. Well, again, I think it plays to the fact that you have one candidate who set himself up really as the heir to the previous council and the things that have been done. And I think in that context, to attack that candidate, you're attacking the record of his predecessor and the council as a whole. And I think, it's not the usual situation. Oftentimes when a mayor retires or resigns, they fall more into behind the scenes, as it were. But it also should be said that a lot of, I think it was Churchill, that most political careers end in failure. And so Eddie Francis has done well to leave having been successful.
He's leaving them laughing, like
I guess
George
so.
Costanza.
That's right. That's right. I'm out of here.
Yeah, exactly. So, and the one thing too, a lot of times too, when they sort of retreat into the sunset, they really maintain a studied neutrality. I'm not going to endorse anyone, and Eddie is actually taking the opposite tack. He says, I'm going to get in there, I'm going to mix it up. He endorsed his brother and a couple other people, Dilkens, yesterday. He's going to come on here tomorrow, endorse some more people.
Right.
Again, is that unusual?
Yeah, I think, I think what is going to, it may cause more of an issue after the election, depending on the result. Now, if his endorsed candidates are successful, so if Drew Dilkens wins, then he's going to find himself fairly quickly in a position where he's going to have to create some space between him and the predecessor to paint himself as his own mayor. Now that will happen. He has 4 years to do it, but I think you're going to see him more taking that leadership role, and then Eddie Francis falling more into the background. I think what is, we're shaping this election, and it has become very much focused on the legacy, the record of Eddie Francis, and so it is a little bit unusual in that context to have a retired or a politician who stepped down still be such an active force in it.
Excellent.
Are there any other sort of storylines or things developing in this campaign that you find intriguing?
I will be interested to see, I think, after Election Day, the impact on turnout. And we often, we know that municipal elections have low turnout rates. That's a given. But things like this initiative to encourage interest in the campaign are good. But one of the factors that plays a part is when you have an incumbent running or a non-competitive race, you tend to have lower turnout. Or but when the mayor's race is in play, when there are, as we have here, lots of vacancies or open seats, then hopefully we're going to see a significant spike in turnout and interest in the race, and people expressing that, finding out more about the candidates, what they stand for, and turning out to vote for their preferred candidates. So I'm hoping to see maybe not the kind of turnout you get at federal elections, but certainly higher than we've had in the past cycles.
There is going to be a big turnover on this council. There's going to be a new mayor, probably at least 4 new councillors.
Yeah.
Sort of as a general rule, and this is a bit of a tricky one, but turnover is good in some respects, right? Because you get new voices, fresh blood. It's bad in some respects because there's a steep learning curve. Is there a balance? Is too much turnover a bad thing? Or?
No, I think you're absolutely right. It's a mixed situation. You don't necessarily want a situation where incumbents in municipal elections have a huge advantage. We know that. We all know that. You don't need to be a professor of political science to know the advantage of incumbency at the municipal level. They have, and so incumbents tend to win. And so when you have a situation of, in our case, 10 councillors and 1 mayor, all incumbents running with that inbuilt advantage, And if they hold their seats for long periods of time, then yeah, maybe you get a kind of a staleness that pervades council. So some turnover is good, some excitement in the race, but as you say, we are in a very unusual situation to have almost a majority of the council mayor going to be new to the position, or potentially, depending on the results, over a majority. So yeah, there's going to be a learning curve, but then I think in any political situation there, you see the advantages of the links between administration and council. So it's not just council coming in and first day on the job and saying, now go ahead, run the city. You have people that's their job, and they're going to be there to provide advice to new councillors. So I think you can get the best of new blood, plus the experience that comes from the administration that's going to help guide the new councillors into their work. I think there are many people going to be in for a shock at how much work a part-time job actually entails after election day.
Okay. Perfect. All right. Well, John Sutcliffe, thank you so much for coming on Trail Talk.
Pleasure. A lot of fun.
All right. Thanks. So this is Trail Talk in the Windsor Star News Cafe.